says, this is a really good book. Oh yeah, it's on page 6. Okay, here we go. It says in verse 68, we were just reading, however, is beyond a shadow of a doubt, referring to the infamous transatlantic slave trade. Then it says, oh yeah, because it got the pictures of the slave ships. Of course this. But it says the word Egypt in verse 68 does not particularly mean the land of Egypt. Rather, Egypt is symbolic because it was the Israelites' first major captivity. Egypt is also referred to in Exodus 13 verse 3 as the house of bondage. The Lord was making it clear that Israel's end would be a semi-permanent state of captivity and enslavement. There is only one group of people that this is applicable, and it is not those who predominantly claim to be Jews today. History undeniably reveals to us who was a whore on slave ships and sold on auction blocks as bondmen and bondwomen, as described in Deuteronomy 28:68. Only those stripped from Africa have endured being captured as slaves and transported by the way of ships to the America, Europe, and Asia. At the end of verse 68, the words "no man shall buy you" mean that a flesh and blood man wouldn't be able to redeem Israel as a nation. Right. As indeed no man has been able to fully deliver Israel. Salvation has not come from freedom fighters such as Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Frederick Douglass, W.E. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, etc. These and the present leaders of blacks have been unsuccessful in achieving what leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi did for India. But basically what this is going on is talking about our history and how scriptures describe the so-called Negroes. Like for instance,
but you know what? Now
teaches us we are Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah,
we are the people of the
Bible.
Bible.
Also keep understanding is this. Even when you look at the history of per se King, Malcolm, Marcus Garvey, John Brown, is that when you look at the story, that's a good example. Nat Turner, who they claim to be mentally disturbed preacher who went on a rampage. Understand that's their story. That's not necessarily the true version. Let me share some with you. Take, for example, that very passage of scripture that you read.
Deuteronomy 28:68.
Right. He can have his, he can interpret it. You maybe can be strong in the word and you interpret it. Okay? And then I can be totally illiterate to that particular passage of scripture. That's what I'm saying. But I remember this. You know what I'm saying? I write the book on it. And you know what people gonna believe? They're gonna believe the author. Because authenticity is really based on whoever writes the book becomes the authority in the minds of people. That's the way people think. The person that writes the book is what people. You was taught in school. You had to pass American history. You had to pass the Constitution and all that good stuff, but that was because that's what they required. It's not the history of the black man. They never told you that after the emancipation time that black people took on the South, that the real reason for the Ku Klux Klan was to scare us back into our place. That black people was governors, lieutenants, and all, lieutenant governors, judges, and everything.
Black Wall Street.
Yeah, exactly. All that. They don't tell you that. They don't really tell you that the real reason that he was assassinated was not because he defiled Elijah Muhammad. That was a good time to kill him.
He was leaving Islam.
He had already left. The only reason he wasn't leaving Islam, he had left affiliation with Elijah Muhammad. But the real reason he was assassinated had nothing to do with the rift between the two. If you and him get an argument and he wants to kill you, but you and him make threats against him, if he kills him, you're going to get the blame. Or if he killed you, he gets the blame. The real reason why is because this man was scheduled to speak to the United Nations. And if you speak to the United Nations, he could have destroyed world trade with the United States, its economy. It's always about business. It's the same thing that Ken Atkins said about Jesus. It's better for one man to die than for all of us to perish. It's always been government. And the beast, Revelation talking about the beast shall rise about the sea. The sea is politics. That's why Isaiah spoke when he talked about Christ, because he said, and the government shall be up on his shoulder. Government is what destroys the world, because we are all about government. It's all about politics. Look how many words, even when Obama became president, you had people in Japan holding up signs, Obama, Obama, Obama. Obama is a man. Don't get me wrong, he's a brother, but he's still a man. Even Isaiah came to grips with that in the 6th chapter of Isaiah. It said, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord. And the thing is, Uzziah had the economy straight, better than Bill Clinton ever could. But what they had to understand was that Uzziah is dead now. This is what we're going to do. It ain't about what we're going to do. God had to let him know. He said, when I saw the Lord, he said, his train filled the temple. I mean, his glory filled the temple. And the angels, the seraphims with 6 wings, was crying, holy, holy, holy. And what he came to grips was that the king is, he said, Uzziah dead, but the king is still alive. God let him know, I run this. I'm the reason that your crops grew. I'm the reason all the money y'all sent to, we sent to Ethiopia when then people were starving. That ain't gonna make the clouds gather, make the grass grow. That don't do that. If God, this church could have $10 million, okay? And I might, all this land that surrounds us belongs to us. And I might do one, and I said, we gonna build. If God says no, no means no. You can't do it. God can fix it when you can't build nothing. The soil can be bad. When you can't even tap into the soil. The EPA said you can't build on this ground. That's how God operates. And what man has to understand is when we try to look out and try to figure out one thing about how God gonna do this, how God do, what we really need to understand is this, is that we need to seek him, establish a relationship with him. Everything in that Bible is a historical example of, and that's what it's examples, and it's symbolic. But what it's letting us know that God has been patient.